Well, welcome back to the Leadership Academy podcast. I'm AJ Willoughby, glad to be with you all again. And, I told you all that we were going to be having a part 2 and doing it with Shawn Shewchuk. And for those that you missed out a little bit on the first one, you're going to have to go check out the first episode that we did, because a lot of great information, which is why it is that we got to do it again to follow up, because there were so many other questions that wanted to go into and so much advice that he has to offer. For those who don't know, he's the productivity speaker, is what he's known as. He is the #1 results coach. He founded Change Your Results Incorporated, which is an international coaching and change agency with clients all around the globe. Additionally, he's hosts the award-winning Results radio broadcast, and so much more. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the books that he has, because he he's a 2-time best-selling author, was also featured on the movie The 1 Minute Success System with Brian Tracy, and also produced and appeared in a second production entitled Game Changer. And we talked a little bit about some of those in that first, so if you missed that, go back and watch it. But let's jump into it here. But first off, so you know, our sponsor of the show, before I forget, our sponsor of the show is Titan Media Works. Titan Media Works, they are the easy way to getting your podcast done through editing, the production, getting everything taken care of for your company, for your corporation, or for you personally. You're looking to get into podcasting, but you don't want the learning curve that comes with it, with everything else. They can help you out. Go check them out online, Titan Media Works, WORX.com, and they can help. All right, let's go on ahead. Let's dive in and pick up a little bit of where we were leaving off. Shawn, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me back. It's good to be here.
So, we had a lot of stuff that we were leaving in my mind, as far as a lot of stuff that I wanted to touch on. I know, we talked a little bit about, the fact that 44 different companies that you started and that you had a hand in, and we talked about relationships. We talked about some of the things that you've done with other, powerful people in the leadership realm. But one of the other things is, I know you've got a lot of background in helping entrepreneurs getting off the ground, getting started with their companies, and kind of in that startup process. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that today. And also we're going to talk about some of your books, but let's dive in about some of the entrepreneurial type of stuff. First off, you've got a guy coming in and saying, I've got this great idea for a new business. I think it's going to be totally successful. And I'm trying to figure out, hey, am I incorporated? Am I an LLC? What am I going here? I'm trying to figure all that stuff out. Where do you start with people that come to you with those kind of questions?
This is a really good question. And here's the interesting part. I don't do a lot on the startup side usually, but having had, obviously it happens. It's not where I focus. But one of the interesting sides of all this is, and you and I may have touched on this in our last conversation. Michael E. Gerber, author of E-Myth and E-Myth Revisited, he talks a lot about, just because you have a company, you've gone out and incorporated and, whatever it is you've done on the legal side doesn't mean you're actually an entrepreneur. And people look at me funny when I say this to them, because the reality of it is most people are not. They go out and do what it is they're good at. Maybe that's being a consultant or a graphic designer or a plumber or whatever it happens to be. But that doesn't mean you're an entrepreneur, because more of the same gives you more of the same. And so they just keep digging and digging and digging. And, that still means they're digging a hole or digging a trench. So the reality of it is you have to understand the difference. And so if you're going to grow, expand, and scale, you need to have a structure. And in most cases, we want to have that incorporated entity, depending on the jurisdiction we come, we're in, LLC, LTD, Inc., whatever it is. And, certain types of organizations might even be a limited liability. So, this is the transactional side of understanding this. And most people don't want to hear this stuff. It's boring and it sucks. And the reality of it is, if you don't have a proper structure, you are going to end up in some deep trouble. one of the things one of my first coaches, Bob Proctor, said to me many years ago. He said, Shawn, you're going to hit a point in time where you need to have a lawyer on a retainer. I went, I'm fine, Bob. I'll be fine. He said, no, Shawn, you need to do this. And what he was really getting at is when you hit a certain point in time, things are going to happen that you don't account for, you're not used to having. And there's always the other side of that where there are people out there today who want you to fail. Now, people look at me funny when I say this, say, Shawn, you're supposed to be positive and upbeat, and I am. But there are people out there today that don't want you to succeed. They want you to fail. And for a whole bunch of reasons, maybe they're your competitor, maybe they're upset that you're doing better than they are, or whatever those reasons are, and they're going to take pop shots at you. And you need to protect yourself. And so the structure is a big part of that. Taxation and structure is a big part of that. I'm not going to cross any boundaries here of being an accountant or an attorney, but these are all professionals you need to have a conversation with. My view has been skewed, as I said to you before we went on the air, because I have a background in this and I take a look at it from a different perspective. If someone comes, I'm working with a client and they come to me with some kind of an agreement or contract, there are times I'll read through it and say, hey, you should go talk to your legal counsel, or because at the end of the day, there's a different perspective when you see that and from a different background. So structure in a whole bunch of areas. And once you have your company, you say, hey, I'm going to grow, expand, and scale because, hey, listen, I got into business to achieve freedom. Freedom is defined, as you know, in three ways. The ability to do what you want, when you want, and with whom you want encompasses everything. But if I still do what I did yesterday and I do it today, tomorrow, and onwards, I'm not going to see any different outcomes or results. So I have to do something dramatically different. That means I have to put in place processes, procedures, and systems. That means as I grow, expand, and scale, I have to bring people on. I have to bring the right people on. And then you'll find yourself at a place as you do that and sales increase where you become the quote unquote CEO. What's a CEO's job? A CEO's job is one thing only, is to find and install the right people into the right positions. That is his or her job. And a lot of people have a hard time with that. I did. I remember growing the largest independent management consulting firm on the western side of this continent. And at just over $9 million, I had to hand a portion of this over to a CEO. I've got to tell you something. It was the hardest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
And the following morning, and I think I shared this with you, I'll share it again for those watching and listening. The following morning, after we went through the vetting process and hired this guy, I was at the office by 6 a.m. and I hung my coat in the closet, and he looked at me and he said, "Good morning, Shawn." I said, "Good morning." He said, "Why are you here?" I said, "Well, obviously it's work." He goes, "Listen, this is your company, but you hired me for a reason. Stay out of my way." Wow. Right? And so that's part of why we get into business. Getting into business is not just about, well, I don't want to work for somebody anymore. Most people, 99.8%, get into business because they want the freedom that comes along with it. And the fact that they can scale up. They can say, well, I made 50 grand or I made 100 grand this year, but next year I'm going to hit 2. And then in 3 years or in 5 years, I'm going to beat $1 million or 2 or 3 or whatever that looks like for your particular, your particular company, application, business, career, or vertical, whatever it is.
So, all right, a lawyer, right? That's a scary term. You people should get a lawyer. It's like, wait a minute, why do I need to do that? I'm not at that point yet. But you made a really good point. If you're planning on succeeding, other people are planning on making sure that you fail, and you're going to be signing contracts. You're going to be signing all types of agreements. There's other things going to be involved. So you got to figure out, where do you start? What's the first place? If you're looking for a lawyer, granted, every lawyer out there is like, yeah, I'll help you. Come on board, and we'll take care of you. Then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, now it's $200, $300, $500, an hour and more.
Yep.
Where do you begin? What kind of price range do I need?
I don't have an answer for you on that side because every market is different. And I don't think there's any rules or regulations behind, what they can charge other than, unless it's unethical. But as far as an hourly rate, I always look at it this way. Look at creating relationships in a partnership. I have a lawyer that I've dealt with for probably 20 years. I'll probably have to find a new one here in the next year or two because I think he's going to retire. But, that's a key, is relationships, right? And there was a point in time where I was running 4 companies, and I had 3 or 4 lawyers that we worked with. No, I didn't see them every day, and I didn't communicate with them every day, but when we needed to, we had them there. And there are times where you need an instantaneous response. And that's a big, big part of doing this. If you don't have that relationship, a response like that costs a lot of money. If you need some lawyer to respond to somebody on a Saturday morning, it's going to cost you some serious cash.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, but outside of that, yeah, I mean, the reason the main reason we have, for example, we have corporations. There's what's called the corporate veil, and if you look at it this way, a corporation is almost like having another person sitting beside you, between you and your clients and the outside world. And there are ways that through courts they can pierce that, but at the end of the day, it's really set up in a way to protect you, and that's why we call it, limited liability. That's the whole purpose behind it, right? But before you get to that point, I think this is an important juncture for us to kind of take a look at something that we talked about last time. Is the average entrepreneur today, and the vast majority, somewhere in the 90%, 90, 91, 92%, never get to that place. They never grow past that. Right? There's some pretty staggering statistics about how many companies never hit $1 million, right? About 1% hit $1 million.
Why is that?
Entrepreneurs are good at what they do. And I'll go back to that, in the book E-Myth, what Gerber talks about, where he says, most are not entrepreneurs. They're technicians suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure, and we get caught up in what we believe has to be done, and perhaps it does, but the entrepreneur shouldn't be the one necessarily doing everything. And I hear, well, Shawn, it's easy for you to say, you've been doing this for a while, and there's truth to that, but the reality behind that is, you're going to wear this, everyone's going to do this. They're going to wear a number of hats for a while, and then they're going to say, okay, I don't like this anymore. I want to be able to spend time with my family, with my kids. I want to travel, whatever those things are. And they'll say, okay, what does it look like? Now, the average person, though, can't let go. Entrepreneur syndrome it's like having handcuffs and shackles on you. You can't move. And we do it to ourselves, right? There's a test I always tell people. If you could leave your business, that means go away, go to another continent for a month, just 4 weeks, and it doesn't implode, you have a business. Listen, if you buy a job, and that's what most of these do, most of these entrepreneurs, they go out and buy themselves a job, and they have to be there. And it's not just about 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day. It's about 15 hours a day. That's not being an entrepreneur, right? So that answers your question in a sort of a long way. You have to be able to let go. You have to be able to say, in order to do this, I can't do it all myself. And then the likelihood of you needing a coach is very high. Someone who's been there, someone who understands what it takes to walk hand in hand and side by side, to avoid potholes, to collapse timeframes, to hold your feet to the fire from time to time, which some people don't like. And it takes the appetite for change. And I said this to you last time. Most people today, entrepreneurs or not, will remain the same until the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of change. And then and only then will they say, "Oh, okay." And reluctantly, they'll take a step in the opposite direction from the one they, wholeheartedly believe was the right direction. And sometimes we put on blinders and we just keep plowing ahead. That doesn't necessarily mean we're always going in the right direction. And I think it's an important step. If you can sit down with somebody who doesn't have an emotional attachment, and that's a coach. Now, I want to insert something here. If you go out looking for a coach online and you find a coach that's $50 an hour, don't hire him. That tells you something. They've never been where you want to go. And somebody who's never been where you want to go, someone who's never built a company, I don't know, to $1 million or $2 million or $5 million or 100+ million, isn't going to be able to help you. Okay. Now, they may be able to hold your feet to the fire up to a certain point, and they may be able to guide you to a certain point. But there's going to come a point in time where you surpass them. And I have people, we'll have a conversation about the investment to work with me. And they'll be like, oh my goodness, Shawn, that's a lot of money. And I say, well, you're right, it is. They'll say, there's cheaper people out there. I say, yeah, and you know what? If you want me to, I'm happy to refer you to the cheap guys. And all of a sudden, the conversation changes, and the dynamic of the conversation changes because they realize what the impact of what I said is. And if you really want to grow, expand, and scale, if you want real freedom, freedom is defined in the 3 ways I shared earlier. If you want to be able to do those things that are important to you, spend time with your wife, your husband, your kids, travel, whatever those things are for you, you need to be able to do what we're talking about today. And you need to do it in a way that collapses time frames. You don't want to do it in 20, 30, or 40 years. You want to do it in the next 2 to 5.
Something you mentioned, and you mentioned it in the last podcast, and also we talked about briefly, is relationships and the power of relationships. You are someone who's built some very powerful relationships, very strong leaders that are very well known. How do people go about building that level of relationships?
Get out of the house. Okay. I was on, and I think I shared this with you. I'm not sure if it was on the air or not. Right at the beginning of sort of when COVID hit and everybody was locked down in probably early April of 2020, I was on a broadcast with a whole bunch of people, and there was some so-called expert on that broadcast pontificating about how amazing he was, and then went on to say later on that we would, as a result of COVID, we would never again shake hands with each other. We would never again meet across a boardroom table or go for lunch or coffee. We'd never have networking. And I called him out on it because we are social beings. In order for you to do what we are talking about today and what we talked about the last time I was on the show is dependent upon those strong, powerful, and high trust relationships. I said this last time too. Your life's every single one of us. If you're listening and watching this, I want you, and if you forget everything else I said, internalize this. Your life is predicated on only 2 things. Number 1, your decisions. And number 2, the relationships you establish, nurture, and build. That's it.
Yeah.
If you don't have relationships, you're going to end up going in a vicious circle or nowhere at all. So get out of the house, shake hands, kiss babies, go to events, put yourself in the way of who or what you want. If you see somebody you want to meet, maybe they are a celebrity, find a way to get in front of them. And I don't mean aggressively. I don't mean where the cops are coming after you for harassment. I've done this at events where I have watched this person come on stage, and I know they're going to take the same route back when they leave the stage at the end of their presentation. And I've missed half their presentation to be there when they come off stage because I want to be able to shake their hand and have a conversation with them. And in most cases, get them to give me their phone number.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have the right conversation and you have the confidence to walk up and say, hi, my name is, and stick your hand out, they will do the same.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm going to share a quick story with you. Many years ago, long before I was married to the most amazing woman in the world, I was at an event, and there was a young lady there who everybody who is watching and listening to us speak today would know. And she's a celebrity, and I'm sure the organizer of the event paid for her to come to the event for an hour and a half, and her security detail and all this kind of thing. And I put myself in the way of her exit to go back outside to her limo. And she was kind enough to shake my hand and for me to introduce myself. And she told her security to stand down. And don't get me wrong, there's presentation too. I mean, I was dressed in a suit and tie and I looked the part. If you come out dressed like you're going to the beach, you're probably not going to get what you're looking for. And we ended up, and this is an interesting story. We ended up having dinner that night. And she said, you know what? And let's be clear about something. This woman is not ugly. Okay. And she said something interesting to me at dinner. She said, most people don't have what it takes to come up and say hi. She said, even if my security detail is around, I go for a run in the morning. She said, most people that see me and recognize me don't talk to me. They are afraid to approach me. And she said, there was a reason that I asked security detail to back off when you walked up and said hi, because you had the courage to come and say hi. Now, we ended up being friends, and from time to time, I still talk to her. And, having personal moments like that is an incredible experience that most people don't get to ever encounter because they're afraid. And so when I ask people, what are you afraid of? They don't have an answer.
Yeah.
Put yourself in the way of what you want. Now, you have to really want this. And then that goes a step back, which we talked about in our last conversation. Every single audience I've ever spoken to, I've asked one question. What is it you really and truly want? Just one question. And the average person today, which is a high 90 percentile, doesn't have any idea what they want. They know what they don't want. They don't want to go through divorce or go bankrupt or lose their job or whatever these things are, but they don't know what they do want. If what you want is your destination, if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right. We're running out of time, but I want to dive in because we haven't talked about your books yet. And Grant, I know you've got a couple of books. You've got Daily Motivation. You've got your Freedom Journal. But the latest one, well, maybe this is the latest. No,
well, so
there's also
I'll
Change
share.
Your Mind, Change Your Results.
Change Your Mind, Change Your Results is actually the oldest book. Best-selling within, I don't know how long, was it within the first week. We have sold hundreds of thousands of copies of that through our own, as well as, through every bookseller, Amazon, whatever, around the world. That book continues to be one of the biggest drivers for us I think I've ever seen, because it's written in such a way that even a 12-year-old can read it and understand it. And that's not to say that it's intended for someone who isn't intelligent when they're an adult. It's really designed in a way to really speak to you. And it's one of those books you can probably read in an evening or two. It's only 50,000 words. There's another book coming out later this year. And then also, of course, you mentioned the Daily Motivation. And it's kind of a devotional. There's one page for every day of the year. I put an extra one there, 366 days in case you hit a leap year. There's a couple assignments in there you can fill out and use the book as a little bit of a workbook. That book, I think we've done third or fourth print run on that in the last, I don't know, it's been out for a year and a half or maybe just a little more than that. It's the number one country in the world for sales is the United States for that book. It has been. And then, I come out with, there's the journal, and then the newest one is the Freedom Planner. And the Freedom Planner is unique. That one, I can't tell you how many times we've had to reprint that and sell it. I mean, we have companies that buy, a copy for every employee. So they'll phone us and say, can we have 5,000? And we say, yeah, you have to give us about 4 or 5 weeks, but yes, you can. So it's really designed in this way. What is your overarching objective? What is it you want to achieve in the next 2 to 5 years? And then we break that down. See, the human mind is interesting. I'm a simple guy. You can eat a whole apple, but there's a good chance you can't eat a whole apple in just a single bite. So we take this into bite-sized pieces you can assimilate, understand, that your mind goes, oh yeah, I get that. If you have never made $1 million, but you want to do that, you're never going to make $1 million unless you break it down, because you've never been there. You don't understand what it takes to get there. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It just means we have to do it in a way that you accomplish it. So if we take that $1 million and reverse engineer it so that we know what has to happen every year, every month, every week, every day. And for guys like me with maybe a touch of undiagnosed ADHD, we break it down by the hour. And we say, how many hours a day are you going to work? And what are those, and this is the key, and I want to emphasize this, what are those high leverage activities that you should be engaged in every day? And there's 3 of them. And so the way that planner is designed is you have 3 HLAs every day, and then you have a recap on the weekend. What is it you did? How did you defer something? Are you waiting for something? Did you accomplish it? And it's intended to help you go through those high leverage activities. So whatever that overarching objective or goal is, you attain it within that period of time. And I think that's a really important step, because just saying, yes, I'm going to do this, whatever this happens to be, $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. Right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's getting that plan. It's put that together. All right. So they want to get a hold of the book. How do they get the books?
Go to changeyourresults.com, click on it. You should be able to get it. If you need to, you can always send us a message, or you can call the 800 number on the website. We're happy to help in any way we can. And I'll do something more. If there's someone out there who wants to have a conversation or who wants to do this, because a lot of times what we do is we use that planner in conjunction with the coaching, including Line Factor. So if they're coaches, if you're a coach or you want to be a coach and you really want to not fit into the mold where 98% of all coaches today fail within the first 12 to 24 months of them getting into coaching, Line Factor coaching is an important step. And this planner is what we use. But I'll tell you what, you can send a text message. This comes right to me, and I'll give you the number. It's an easy number. It's 403-457-4002. You can put that up on the screen if you want to. Write it down, 403-457-4002. And send me a message and say, hey, here's what I'd like to do, or I'd like to have a conversation with your phone number. And that's what this is really all about. This is about you looking at where you're at today and saying, hey, you know what? I'm not necessarily happy with where I am. The biggest motivator for every single human being on the planet is dissatisfaction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're absolutely right. Shawn, this has been incredible. You've done, thank you so much for coming on a second time onto the show. You're amazing. The advice you have. I know you gave your piece of advice that you wish you had. If there was anything that you have to leave us with today, what would you leave us with?
You know, I love when people ask this question because I asked something similar. I talk about the golden nugget at the end. The one thing I will say, if you are sitting there today watching and listening to us have this conversation, and you're thinking, I need to finish something before I start. I'm not sure if now's the right time. I don't know if this is, listen, we have been pre-programmed to ask the wrong questions. And the questions we typically ask, is it right for me? Is it the right time? Is it really going to work? Is this guy for real? Well, yeah, you know, I think in June of this year, we'll hit 13,000 clients. So yes, this is real. This happens every day and this works every time. Don't hesitate. You know, Bob Proctor used to say to me, and don't do this literally, he used to, Shawn, jump off the building and grow wings on the way down. That means believe in yourself enough that you can do this. And you know what? Every single person that has succeeded, right? But it takes that initial step that, you know, if you have to doubt something, my final thought, if you have to doubt something, doubt failure.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, and I like that. You grow wings on your way down. If you don't have the guts to jump off and know that, you know, hey, this is going to be scary. If you're going to have all the answers before you are willing to do that, know it all, you're right. You're not going to be successful because there's a lot of risk that comes in being successful. So you got to take the risk to do it. So, your radio show. How do they get on to listen to your radio show?
You can go to yourresultsradio.com.
Yourresultsradio.com. All right. Awesome. Shawn, thank you so much. Everybody, you've been listening to the Leadership Academy podcast. Again, brought to you by Titan Media Works. Go check them out. Titan Media Works, WORX.com. They are the easy button to help you get your podcast going. They can take care of you. Go check them out online. Until next time on the Leadership Academy podcast, I'm AJ Willoughby. Great one.